President Trump a short time ago telling Walmart that the company should, I'm quoting now, eat the cost, end quote, of higher tariffs. The comments come after the retail giant said this week that it would raise prices because of Trump's tariffs being too high.
President Donald Trump told Walmart to, quote, eat the cost of rising tariffs so they can keep prices low for consumers. Walmart announced Thursday they would begin passing on rising costs to shoppers at the end of this month, but they didn't specify by how much.
It began with a shockwave through America's largest retailer. President Trump, reportedly enraged, unleashed a hurricane of tariffs, and Walmart struck back. In a stunning maneuver, the retail giant yanked portions of its supply chain out of the U.S., blaming rising tariffs for making their everyday affordable prices impossible to maintain. Trump demanded they absorb the cost, but Walmart refused. Instead, they boosted prices across the board, sending shockwaves through households already battling with inflation. Moments later, another bombshell. Walmart cautioned of further price increases and urged shoppers not to panic purchase yet. But panic, it seemed, was inevitable. Behind the brilliant lights of America's biggest stores, a troubling reality was emerging. Walmart and Target, once the pillars of retail stability, now faced losing access to essential goods in the unfolding tariff battle. Picture this. You walk into Walmart for your usual 500-gram beef package, and overnight it jumps from $9 to nearly $14. A bag of lettuce climbs 30%. Your morning cereal costs $2 more. The American grocery aisle was no longer secure. And beyond American shores, the ripple effect was devastating. While Trump blasted Walmart for betraying American workers, food shortages began to plague nations far away. Disrupted supply chains, congested ports, and canceled shipments meant rice, cooking oil, and canned meat weren't reaching Asia and Africa. Supermarkets in Southeast Asia reported U.S. imports vanishing. Markets from Nairobi to Manila boosted prices overnight, leaving families desperate. Walmart's everyday low-price mantra disappeared without warning, silently scrapped to prevent what could be a staggering $25 billion loss in the second quarter of 2025. But higher grocery bills were only the beginning. By June's end, Walmart announced it would temporarily shut down 10 major distribution centers. Over 50,000 workers faced unemployment. The just-in-time logistics empire designed to keep America's shelves stocked was now teetering on collapse. On Wall Street, the panic was infectious. Walmart's price increases and distribution center closures triggered fears of chaos spreading beyond retail. Electronics giants, apparel chains, and toy manufacturers, industries relying on Walmart's buying influence to stabilize expenses, now face the same tariff-driven price surges. It all started on April 2, 2025, when the White House Rose Garden transformed into a battlefield of economic warfare. That morning, Trump signed Executive Order 14,257, the Liberation Day tariffs. Walmart's retreat from America wasn't an isolated incident. Other major retailers began evacuating as well. Quietly, Target, Costco, and Home Depot started negotiating deals in Vietnam and India, shifting supply lines away from China. This mass exodus marked the largest global supply chain transformation since the 1990s. By midnight April 5th, nearly every import entering the U.S. faced a 10% base tariff, sparing only Canada and Mexico. Then came the second assault. Just 4 days later, the White House unleashed retaliatory tariffs against 60 trade partners. China bore the brunt, a devastating 145% tariff on most exports. Almost instantly, Walmart's Chinese toy supplier, Hunar Toy Factory, saw orders canceled and production slashed by 70%. By April's end, the American Toy Association issued a dire warning. Nearly half its members faced bankruptcy. Meanwhile, shipping rates on the Shenzhen-Long Beach route tripled. Behind the scenes, shortages were developing before anyone stepped into a store. At the ports of Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Savannah, hundreds of containers sat abandoned. Importers facing new tariffs they couldn't afford began deserting shipments. Customs brokers reported something chilling. Some companies simply walked away from their cargo, leaving it to decay on the docks. Then came May 2nd. Trump escalated the stakes again, threatening a 50% tariff on all European imports unless the EU surrendered to his demands. A tense phone call with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen bought a temporary extension, pushing the deadline to July 9th, but the damage had already begun. EU stock markets hemorrhaged $180 billion in just 3 days. Germany's car exports froze, and the Euro Stoxx 600 plunged 4.4%. The human toll was swift and brutal. On the front lines of American retail, Walmart employees felt the impact first. With fewer trucks arriving at stores and pallets going unstocked, shifts were reduced. Associates were forced onto split schedules, scrambling for hours to keep their paychecks stable. Warehouse workers lost overtime just when the summer ramp-up should have commenced. On May 28th, the U.S. Court of International Trade ruled that Trump had exceeded his authority, pausing most of the tariffs. But instead of clarity, the ruling only added confusion. Businesses now faced a terrifying question. What happens when the courts lift the pause weeks from now? Would the tariffs return overnight? Would they climb even higher? Since Trump's 145% tariff took effect, sea freight rates on the Asia-US route exploded. What once cost $3,500 per 40-foot container surged to $6,500 in just 3 weeks. Shipping carriers warned it could reach $8,500 before summer's end. The just-in-time delivery system that Walmart spent decades perfecting was now crumbling under the pressure. Companies scrambled to stockpile inventory before the next tariff wave hit, sending warehouse rents soaring. Bonded warehouse fees quadrupled overnight. As Walmart shuttered 10 of its distribution centers to reduce costs, it burned millions daily storing containers that had nowhere else to go. A logistics network built for velocity was now bogged down by stillness and uncertainty. Agricultural exporters faced their own nightmare. Walmart's global network once transported U.S. beef and produce across Asia. Now those products sat in cold storage, their expiration dates ticking down. Beef exports to Asia, a Walmart staple, accumulated unsold. Some meat spoiled before it ever departed the port. Farmers still struggling to recover from the last trade war during Trump's first presidency now saw their hard-fought gains erased. Economists warned that these tariffs alone would add roughly $1,000 annually to the average household's expenses. In May, Walmart's CFO John David Rainey painted a grim picture. Beef soaring from $12 to $14 per pound, patio sets adding $60, and a child's car seat jumping from $350 to $450. Walmart's sacred promise of everyday low prices now under siege like never before. Then, behind closed doors, Walmart sounded the alarm. On May 28th, a leaked internal memo titled Project Triage shook Wall Street. It confirmed what many feared. Walmart would suspend operations at 10 major distribution hubs over the next 6 weeks. From California to Florida, these shutdowns would ripple through local economies. The names on the shutdown list read like a map of American commerce: Riverside and Fontana in California, Brooksville and Winter Haven in Florida, Pageland in South Carolina, Sanger in Texas, Elwood in Illinois, Groveport in Ohio. These were not just dots on a map. They were the beating heart of Walmart's retail empire. Each hub covered more than 800,000 square feet, running 24/7 to feed Walmart's logistics network. 50,000 workers, most in temporary or agency positions, were told their paychecks would cease by June 30th. But as Walmart struggled, its competitors circled like vultures. Amazon ramped up grocery discounts at Whole Foods, betting frustrated shoppers would defect. Discount chains like Aldi and Dollar General expanded their grocery offerings, hungry for Walmart's displaced customers. Meanwhile, on social media, the panic spread like wildfire. On TikTok, the hashtag empty aisles exploded, racking up 12 million views in a single day. Viral videos showed shelf after shelf wiped clean as users demanded answers from Trump. The images were haunting. For many families, the tariff war wasn't some distant economic debate. It was right there in their grocery cart, in their refrigerator, and on their kitchen tables. Walmart, faced with a staggering $25 billion hemorrhage, launched a counterattack. Internally dubbed Project Reset, this plan aimed to overhaul the company's entire global supply chain in just 24 months. The first step, an aggressive retreat from China. Before the tariffs, nearly 60% of Walmart's non-essential goods came from Chinese factories. By the first quarter of 2025, that number dropped to 48%. In Hanoi, Vietnam's Ministry of Industry and Trade revealed Walmart's plans to invest $1.2 billion to expand textile and home goods production. But this pivot wasn't smooth. In April, the White House threatened Vietnam with anti-dumping duties as high as 46%. That led to Walmart's second move, the American Heartland Initiative, a $5 billion plan to build 3 new factories focused on home goods and electronics in Arkansas, Ohio, and South Carolina. Walmart pledged to invest $350 billion over the next decade, hoping to slash overseas shipping times from 28 days to under 1 week. Walmart's third gamble sounded like science fiction. Partnering with robotics firm Symbotic, it expanded an AI-powered automation system called Link 16. For $520 million, Walmart deployed Link 16 across 400 fulfillment centers. The system analyzed live freight rates, tariffs, and even weather patterns to predict supply chain disruptions and reroute shipments in real time. But all of these grand strategies rested on a fragile political tightrope. If a new administration took office in 2029 and reversed Trump's tariffs, Walmart could be stuck with billions in U.S. factory investments it no longer needed. It was a race against time and against politics. Just 6 weeks after the Liberation Day tariffs began, Walmart's stock plunged 11%, wiping out nearly $37 billion in market value. The sell-off swept through the logistics sector. FedEx slashed its full-year outlook, warning of a brutal operating environment ahead. The Dow Jones Transportation Index tumbled 17% from its November highs as investors braced for a full-scale supply chain meltdown. By the third week of Liberation Day tariffs, Brussels issued a dire warning: $380 billion, roughly 70% of EU exports to the US, were now at risk. Europe threatened $95 billion in retaliatory tariffs unless Washington backed down before the July 9th deadline. The world now faced a chilling question. Would President Trump reverse course to preserve America's trade alliances, or would he double down, dragging the U.S. and its partners into an economic Cold War? As the battle lines hardened, Walmart's $25 billion loss and 10 shuttered distribution centers became more than a corporate setback. They were a flashing red warning for the entire global economy. According to Reuters, Walmart raised prices across the board to offset Trump's tariffs. As a result, shoppers saw their receipts climb by 2 to 3% almost overnight. But that was just the opening salvo. If the White House stayed on its America First path with 145% tariffs on China and dozens of other partners, the consequences would stretch far beyond retail. Manufacturing in America's heartland could stall. Hundreds of thousands of workers could face unemployment, and the global financial system could lurch dangerously close to another crisis. The question on everyone's mind: Were Trump's protectionist tariffs truly reviving American manufacturing, or simply pushing warehouse workers to the brink of devastation? For 50,000 families facing unemployment and entire communities hanging by a thread, the answer was becoming devastatingly clear. When a warehouse shuts its doors, every truck waiting outside turns to rust. The real danger wasn't limited to a few extra dollars for groceries. It was the slow collapse of the invisible network that kept American retail functioning.